Well, hello, mamas. Hello, how are we? Are you ready to talk about our second school supply? The second thing that I, as a study skills tutor, want you to buy your teen in a perfect world. Today, we're talking whiteboards. Okay, it doesn't have to be huge whiteboards, but it can be small whiteboards like this. It can even be little whiteboards from the Dollar Tree, like this one is. But you also want to consider a separate whiteboard, a bigger whiteboard for your teen's room. But let's talk about this, figure out why whiteboards are so important. I want to know, before I tell you why whiteboards are a must have, why they're on my wish list for you, for your teen. But tell me, does your teen use whiteboards at home? Is this something that your child has ever used to study with before? Because I'm honestly very surprised when I meet students who are like, why would I ever use a whiteboard outside of school? So I want to know what you think. And I want to know, is a whiteboard something you already have for your child for homework, for studying? Now, if you're wondering who I am, I'm Jessyka Coulter, CEO and founder of Ace Cookie Tutoring. I teach teens how to learn through study skills so they can actually love to learn. And I got to tell you, there are different learning styles that will benefit differently from whiteboards. And that's something we're going to talk about today. But we can talk more about that during a free consultation. So there's a link in the bio if you want to talk with me one-on-one, and I'd love to include your teen in our discussion. So let's start with this small whiteboard. After you've shared your answer, let me know, is this something your teen uses, likes, would even use? And these small whiteboards I love for scratch paper, okay? Instead of your teen wasting lots of loose leaf paper, or worse, wasting lots of pages in a spiral notebook, have your child use this whiteboard, okay? Now, the things that I want your children to draw, I want things I want your tweens, your teens, even your college students to write out on these whiteboards for practice are actual practice problems. Okay, I want your teens to practice their spelling, their vocab words, their definitions on here. And especially for my visual learners, I want your teens to use these to draw out and create diagrams, anything that isn't making sense just by listening to a recording, maybe like seeing it in a video or reading about it in a book. Draw it out, label things, do whatever needs to be done, but actually use this as scratch paper, okay? Now, the cool thing is about a whiteboard is your teens not only writing on it, drawing on it, but it's actually fun. All right. These have been my go-tos for forever. I mean, since middle school, bare minimum, I've always used whiteboards. I loved it for my Spanish vocab because I could write the words over and over again, practice the spelling. I love it for any type of definitions, any type of matching, because you can, again, write the keywords over and over again. And I love it, again, for the sake of all the different colors of dry erase markers that are out there. Okay, if your child wants to get to the point where he associates certain colors with certain classes or certain information, a whiteboard is a perfect opportunity to do that. And if you're wondering why are colors important to associate with certain classes, again, most definitely a visual learner thing, and most definitely something we can talk about during our consultation. Now, other learning style that really benefits from these whiteboards are our kinesthetic learners. Okay, the actual act of drawing things, of writing things out, is very hands-on, very tactile, or kinesthetic, whatever you want to call it. Okay. Now, the only learning style to me that maybe doesn't benefit as much from a whiteboard is our auditory learner, but the act of drawing, of writing might not be auditory. But if your teen's talking himself through those problems, through those spelling words, through the diagram as he's drawing, as he's kind of looking at a study guide and then using the whiteboard, or looking at his notes and then using the whiteboard, that's the auditory tie-in. So, lesson so far, little whiteboards here, these pretty small ones. What is this, like maybe a 10 by 10, 12 by 12 inch, whatever, are necessities for homework, for test prep, for study sessions. Okay? Now, I also want you to think about the benefits to your teen of a bigger whiteboard. Okay, before I do that, I want to encourage you, if you just happen to be scrolling by and found this video and got curious, I want you to subscribe. I want you to follow. the Ace Cookie Tutoring Facebook page and the Ace Cookie Tutoring YouTube channel, because this is only school supply number 2. I've got 3 more that I want to share with you over the course of the week. So, big whiteboards. Again, doesn't have to be ginormous, but we definitely want it bigger than this. We want something big enough to hang on the wall. Now, I recommend that your teen, your tween, your young adult has a whiteboard in his or her room. The reason? This whiteboard can make a perfect schedule, can make a perfect calendar, can make a perfect to-do list, okay? Now, you can go so far if you want, maybe not in your teen's room, maybe you want to have a family whiteboard, and again, can be used as a calendar. And the cool thing is, depending on how big it is, depending on where it is, depending on how many kids you have, depending on what you yourself are already using to keep track of your calendar, let alone family activities, as you can encourage your teens to keep track of their own stuff on the family whiteboard that's, big enough to actually host all of the assignments, all of those tests, all of the family plans. Okay, so need a big whiteboard, and it could easily be a calendar. It can be something as simple as a to-do list. It can be simple as a schedule. Okay, I want your teen. One of the things that I worked with a lot with a past student is that he came home from school and he had assignments, right, that he'd been assigned to that day, or even tests that he knew were coming up later that week. And he wrote what was new, what needed to be done on his whiteboard in his room because he was very, very kinesthetic. And the other thing is, as soon as your teen writes this thing, this test, this homework on a whiteboard, that's very, very visual because it's there so he can look at it whenever he wants to, reminding him, oh, I need to do that. Okay. Now for auditory learners, that big whiteboard, again, the act of writing it on it, not necessarily going to be auditory. The act of, seeing it, again, not auditory. But our auditory learners are probably going to get a lot of benefit if, again, they write things on the board and then they have a conversation with themselves. Oh, I have this to do, then this to do, or even, well, that's going to take 10 minutes, or on Friday I need to do this. And also, this might sound kind of crazy, but I'm going to say it because I've had a lot of students who are like, oh, the act of scratching things off the list or erasing them off of the calendar, off the whiteboard especially, that can meet all 3 brain styles. Okay, the act is kinesthetic, the seeing the crossed off, seeing the list get smaller is visual, and then even that sound of, how a chalkboard has the scratch, like the nails, use the right eraser, you write tissue, write paper towel, write marker, or even write whiteboard. There can be sound associated with taking things off or even adding, but we're talking about taking off from the whiteboard, which helps our auditory learners. So those are my recommendations for you. Okay, we want your teens to have a whiteboard, a smaller one for homework, for studying, and a bigger one to have, preferably, I suggest, in their room to keep track of their schedules, their calendars, their to-do lists. So if you've got questions, feel free to drop them down below. Better yet, let's talk one-on-one in a free consultation so we can talk about, this school supply, let alone all 5 I'm going to share this week, let alone how does your teen love to learn? How does your teen, actually study, and is it working? So we can see what study skills your teen's missing, so we can make sure this is actually an awesome school year, using the right supplies, adapting and studying and learning in the way that works best for your teen. So have a good night. Talk to you soon, and thank you so much for watching. Jessyka Coulter of Ace Cookie Tutoring, talk about school supplies. See you tomorrow.